What's the cringiest way you've seen someone demonstrate a lack of self-awareness? Saw some lady at Costco throw a tantrum because the line was long. She kept screaming, "But I have membership." You literally have to have a membership to shop there. The entire line had memberships. Knew a sister of the groom, also maid of honor, who pitched a violent fit because the bride was going to wear a tiara for the ceremony. Therefore, the sister couldn't. Literally screamed at both families, "I'm the sister, for God's sake." Apostrophe. I'm a teacher, and there's this one guy I work with who is not a teacher, but sometimes helps in our classrooms. Every time he helps, without fail, he'll tell us about some kid he made a great connection with, who he feels like he really got through to. Only for that kid to complain about how annoying and fake he is the next day. Teens recognize and respect realness over pretty much anything else. My ex-best friend thought that every person she met wanted to hear about all of her medical and social ailments. The first time she met my friend Jack, she immediately launched into a soliloquy about her latest surgery, her recovery time, her other issues, her entire medical history, what a deadbeat her baby daddy is, how her first boyfriend beat her up, etc. etc. Jack didn't say a word, just sat there and nodded. Finally I got her away from him, and she was like, "OMG, I'm pretty sure your friend Jack has a thing for me." Meanwhile, the next time I saw Jack, he was like, "Please never bring her around ever again." My cousin's friend came over to stay for a few weeks. Very vain, and before she left, she wrote a note to my uncle, who is friendly to everyone, saying how she had to sadly reject him, even though she knows how much he is secretly in love with her. We all found the note together after she left, addressed to him. He was with us and opened in front of us. He was creeped out. A woman at my local coffee shop ordered a drink which was served in a paper to-go cup. She proceeded to berate the staff for not offering her a for-here mug and explained to them how horrible that was for the environment. She then demanded a mug and poured her coffee into the mug and threw away the to-go cup. I have a friend who is basically a young Michael Scott. Seriously, sometimes when watching The Office I cringe. Not because of what Michael is doing, but because it reminds me so much of my friend. One day our group of friends gets on the topic of what Office character we are most like. He loudly and immediately declares he thinks he's most like Ryan. A bad class roommate who no one wants to work with, and who I got stuck with last year, commented about how she keeps getting moved around because she's got so much experience. Dude. So I'm in this trauma recovery period right now where I'm realizing all this shit about my parents actually being terrible, but my whole life I believed their stories. One of my parents' hallmark traits is their baffling lack of self-awareness. Your story reminded me of all the times my mom, a teacher, was moved around in her job. Different classrooms, different schools, and then her last teaching job. Before she retired, she was moved from having one classroom at one school to being a mobile teacher. She said it was because they needed her at all the schools because she's so good at her job. In light of other things I know about my mom, nobody wanting her around because she's ducking annoying is most likely the reason she is moved around so much, rather than her version of the story. So crazy. One of my current favorites is a stop and block the supermarket aisle and have a conversation duo. This tops the block the aisle with the cart while you browse oblivious dolt. My mother and I were out walking, and we came across an older couple we knew from the local church. Their eldest son had died the previous year from an inoperable brain tumor, and their younger son just moved out for university. Mum starts with, "Must be nice to have the house to yourself." More time for local church. Conversation devolves from there. She ignores all hints to drop the subject, including the mother stating they hadn't been back to the church since their son died. The couple were obviously horrified. I couldn't end the convo quick enough. Afterwards, my mother told me I was just being immature and had no conception of what polite adult conversation was like. Dude took multiple photos of the Declaration of Independence using flash photography, all while people yelled at him to stop. Other than the array of signs, you are advised multiple times to not use flash. They even have a special room to test if your camera is accidentally on flash. His response was just to listlessly stare at the workers and walk away. The sheer mixture of obliviousness and entitlement in his face made me momentarily lose faith in the idea of democracy while standing in the National Archive. I was working at Yellowstone National Park and someone asked me how we get the bears back into the cages every night. Had another person ask how we turned on Old Faithful in the morning. I told her we flush all the toilets in the park at the same time. There's a small elk herd in Michigan. The DNR plants fields with clover and rye for them to eat and to make studying them easier. They also have parking areas near them labeled as elk viewing areas. I was at one on night hoping to catch a glimpse. This lady who was there with her family, obviously a city slicker tourist, asks me, "Do you know what time they let the elk out? We only have an hour on our itinerary for this." I said the elk are wild. Honestly, they don't even come out here most nights. It's just an easy place to spot them if they happen to be here. She responds, "Well, they really should make them come out." I promised the kids they could feed the elk and take pictures of them. Yeah. Right. Apostrophe. I speak 22 languages and I have completed every Duolingo branch. Apostrophe. A coworker I had who thought I was Mexican. I'm not, just ambiguously beige. And he asked if my people always put maize. Yes, he said maize, not corn, in salsa, and several other things about corn that I can't remember right now. He was really focused on Mexicans and corn. He also noticed a big necklace I was wearing once and asked me what significance it had in my culture. I told him I bought it at Target, so it just means that I like Target, lol. He was reminded that I'm American several times. He just didn't get it for some reason. Oh, and the same coworker also regaled a black coworker with how he was the only white guy who could walk around the ghetto near where he lived at night because he had earned respect and they called him Holmes. Mind you, the cringy coworker in both these stories is not only so white he glows, but he lived in a very nice area and there was definitely no ghetto anywhere near his upscale condo development. I witnessed the second one in person, and it felt like it took a lifetime for me to pick my jaw up off the floor and make up some reason that cringy coworker had to go see our manager in another building immediately. The cringe was so bad, it interrupted the time stream, haha. Newly hired male professor frequently boasting about how the female students were attracted to him and how he could have any of them. He claimed they were attracted by his bad boy image and intelligence. This guy looks like Milhouse from The Simpsons and smells like rotten salty sauerkraut, so I wasn't seeing it. I had the misfortune of being his assigned tar. He stole educational material from other universities, refused to hold office hours, and took photos of himself, his wife, and students off campus. 1,000 plus Facebook photos. All of this while claiming he was a bad boy who would one day be in charge. End of semester. He had the worst student reviews I had ever seen. 1 star. Almost across the board. He was called to the president's office for potential violations of Title IX. Apparently he was massaging the shoulders of one student too often in a meeting. Every single person in the room reported it. Most disgusting thing about my university though, he and his wife still work there. I understand 10-year review is coming up soon. Hopefully that'll get rid of them both. Parasites on the system in every single way. One woman, who is 40 and in great shape, but absolutely desperate to be married, to another woman who is funny and sweet but overweight. I can't believe someone like you is married and I'm not. No lie. And it didn't even occur to her that it was insulting. She's too much of a narcissist to realize that. I have a friend who is extremely susceptible to pop psychology articles on the internet. If she's seen some article on her Facebook feed about being a hypersensitive person or an introverted extrovert, it'll be all you hear about for the next few weeks, and she'll give her unqualified self-diagnosis to anyone who will list. She'll start accentuating those traits, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's especially irritating, because in psychology it's pretty well known that psychological self-assessment is extremely invalid, and that people are way worse at knowing themselves than they think. Had a similar experience with a coworker who read an article and decided she was an empath, which means you have a heightened ability to perceive people's mental or emotional states. Easily the least self-aware person in the entire office. At one point she started yelling people for putting out bad vibes, which she is supposedly more susceptible to than non-empaths. Crazy Beach. Whenever someone I meet claims to be an empath, I quickly figure out that it means overly emotional with poor interpersonal boundaries. We all have our issues that we struggle with, but it's not helpful to take a personality trait that probably isn't healthy and avoid working on it by calling it a superpower. I don't know if this counts, but my mill was talking to this woman and asked her how far along she was pregnancy. She was not pregnant. But the lady took it in stride and was like, oh, I just haven't lost the baby weight from having my son. Mill replies, oh, how old is he? And she goes, he's 7. She put both feet in her mouth in about a 15-second window. My ex going off on a tirade about how her brother was irresponsible for not paying his cable bill that month. 2 days after she told me she wasn't going to be able to give me her half of the expenses for the 3rd month in a row. Was at a party, a guy was publicly putting down his girlfriend, saying loud shit such as, like you have any friends beside me. Then he joins my circle of conversation and starts doing Chris Rock bits, like they were his original thoughts. I tried to give him an out, yeah, I heard that one. And he was like, what? It was as if he had a mental illness or was medicated. Host of the party eventually asked him to leave, told his girl she could stay. She stayed. I had a coworker who is a bisexual woman. She argued up and down that bisexual men don't exist a need to just pick a side. I've known her to date both men and women for sure too. Bonus fun. Her response to a question about Valentine's Day gifts was, I don't need to give a gift. I brought the posse. Not super exciting, but I have a coworker who talks trash on another coworker all the time for having a long-term duck buddy. Meanwhile her, as she calls it, not boyfriend. Boyfriend is a 40-year-old man, 10 years older than her, who just moved out of his mom's house and won't commit to a relationship, but they duck, hang out, and are supposedly exclusive. What would you call that? HMM.